events. And so it would fall under special events. And they're very limited in time.
So could that, if we're gonna look at more signage, you know, you decided all of a sudden you want a sign out on the freeway, can it be designed around that theory, that you can ask for a special request, and there's this criteria, and it's limited to size, it's limited to time?
Well, Highway 14 would not be us. It would
Yeah,
be-
that's
Oh,
what's done.
okay.
Yeah.
But
And they
I'm
do
just
have
thinking of a
criteria.
business owner right here, sitting here, and I'm just curious.
Just from a business standpoint, I personally don't like the idea of having a lot of little signs all over the place. You know, I would, if I needed to promote a business, I would get a sandwich board, maybe put it out during specific hours and then bring it in at night. I don't know what kind of provisions we have for that, but, you know, that would be something I would do. But the other aspect too, I would be more enticed to review our billboard rules rather than laxing these small little signs. Because as a, you know, as someone who's in business, if I'm wanting to promote my business, when you have billboards, I'm not talking about billboard the whole city. I mean, you can do them tactfully and you can make them fit into wherever you're at. But if you have a billboard, A, you're producing commerce because people are buying and purchasing that space, so it's controlled. And B, you're really in a lot of ways creating more jobs because now you've got people who are being hired to sell those billboard positions as well. So, you know, for me, I would much rather review that aspect of the sign ordinance than I would letting a bunch of little signs everywhere cluttering the sidewalks and streets and right-of-ways. But that's just as from my position as a business owner, that's what I would look at.
Yeah, Ken, I agree basically. I really hate the idea of lots and lots of little signs all over the right-of-way for all of the kinds of reasons. It's such a pain for Public Works and everyone else involved. It's a litter problem when they blow over. On the other hand, you know, is it appropriate to allow Washougal Food Center to paint a sign on the side of their building for the Ace Hardware Store, or the True Value Hardware Store, rather? If that's not allowed, we ought to think about that. And the other thing is that kind of comes up along with that. I know Portland has a big problem regulating murals, which you and I would probably call art, but under their sign code, they're signs. And if we're going to go through this, it makes sense to look at that also.
I think the one question tonight was, in not going to a large degree into it, is just trying to give staff some idea of the feeling of council so that they can report back to the planning commission before the planning commission goes in on this one single issue. They're looking at the sign ordinance in totality. But one of the areas that they started going down was this small temporary throughout the city and or with some restrictions. And I kind of looked at him and said,
No.
but at the same time, we don't want to be telling the planning commission what to do and what not to do, but if we're going to them early on and letting them know that it's not going to be looked on favorably, that's one thing. If it is something you want to look at, then it's certainly within your prerogative as well.
And
What
as,
about signs, I'm sorry, what about signs on private property? Say
These-
like if a real estate office has some grass out front and someone approaches them with a different type of business and asks to use their space to put up their sign.
it's not allowed.
allowed?
Currently, it's not allowed.
Yeah,
Huh.
and right now, one of the reasons that a lot of this is starting to come up, there were a lot of instances where, like Joanne says, it's not just the city ignoring its own sign codes. There have been different directives to staff over the years of, you know, that business owner's exempt, or don't worry about that, or those type of signs or anything else. And my take on it when they came to me was, let's read the code, whatever the code says, then let's go with the code until we amend the code. So if we need to look at the code, let's look at the code. So right now, Sherry and the police department and Public Works are sweeping signs as they find them that we know aren't to be placed or are placed in the wrong places, that type of stuff. And a couple of instances we've been talked to about it and that type of stuff, and once it's pointed out, then we go from there, so.
Well, it's my opinion that if a sign is on private property and the owner's given them permission, that maybe we should consider allowing it, just because that's not really our jurisdiction as far as their private property.
Dave?
My concern is that this may be a solution in search of a problem. Do we have any feedback from the public about this issue?
Only one person?
One person, and that's why this is, one person came to the planning commission, and because of that one person, who wants to do this, is why planning commission is thinking about it. And
Obvious.
I think it's a guy who does roofs.
Roof rabbits.
Now, obviously, some things like real estate signs for homes for rent, homes for sale, that type of stuff, we've got
Right, that's
provisions in
allowed.
there, we take care of that for, garage sales, that type of
Right.
stuff, as long as they're placed safely, nicely, we'll let them stay up as long as, and if they're placed appropriately and not illegally and whatnot, we're still taking care of those.
You know what, I really don't want to see a lot of little signs, but I'd also like to allow the planning commission to do their work and come back with a recommendation. Maybe they've got a creative way of looking at this thing that does work. If we simply say no, then it's just, I understand that they don't want to waste their time on it, but I also don't want to say no when in fact sometimes these things, being allowed to put it on the side of somebody else's building, or like Jennifer said, I'd like to at least take a look at it and see what kind of creativity they come up with.
And something John said also got me thinking, these A-board or sandwich signs, it'd be worth looking into how other cities regulate them. I know that in Santa Fe, New Mexico, certain classes of business, particularly restaurants, are allowed to put up those sandwich board signs on the two nearest corners. But they have to be taken in every night.
We have those provisions now.
I didn't mean to, belabor this, it's not on the agenda, so.
Oh, but it will be.
Do you have a feel?
I have a feel.
Good.
I have a feel, thank you. So, my next item is just to remind you that next council will be the public hearing on repeal of resolution 926, which is the downtown revitalization thing. And as I've stated many times, it's not that we're not supporting downtown, we certainly are. In fact, the mayor has plans that he has me working on for phase 2 of revitalization. So I hope no one takes it that way, but this particular resolution identified policies to achieve certain goals, and we have completed all of those items. The next,
Let me
yes,
just
go
ask
ahead.
one thing. If I remember correctly, there are special zoning rules for the downtown core
Yes,
that allow basically greater land coverage, less parking, all kinds of
You're
other
correct.
business enhancement factors that apply only to the
You're
downtown
correct.
core. And those would stay in place.
absolutely, nothing's
Great.
changing. There was a
Great.
special zone code written just for downtown to allow flexibility, to allow the greatest amount of uses, and all kinds of bonuses.